killer phrase was at the end when Kimmel said, "You just don't realize it." Because you see, he's smarter than you, and he needs you to know that. And his ego can't bear that there's someone out there more famous and more influential than him. I got news for you, Kimmel. The last time you mattered, Bruce Jenner still had a penis.
Last night was the 96th Academy Awards show, and while you might have missed it, there was one clear winner. No, not Oppenheimer. It was sanctimonious leftists for their lead role in pretending they are better than you. Winner number one, Jimmy Kimmel.
Jimmy Kimmel has built an entire career on the flimsy scaffolding of snark, self-pity, and relentless celebrity bootlicking. What began as frat boy humor on late-night cable slowly mutated into a sanctimonious sermon series where genuine laughter is rationed out sparingly and self-important lectures pour endlessly like cheap wine at a Hollywood gala. Greg Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly take one glance at this carefully polished mediocrity and proceed to dismantle it piece by piece, exposing just how hollow it truly is.
Is Kimmel really this clueless?
Republicans know the difference between right and wrong in general. Like, they know what they're doing. Something is, I don't know. But the left, I find in general, the party that is about inclusivity is incredibly elitist.
But it's not. It's not the party. It's not the majority. It's the loud voices that scare people from saying what they.
Jimmy Kimmel was very upset that Donald Trump took a shot at Taylor Swift. Trump was making fun of the fact that she got booed openly at the Super Bowl and he got cheered to the high heavens. And Jimmy Kimmel didn't much like that and had the following to say.
At the game, he got a big thrill because some of the booed Taylor Swift when they put her up on the Jumbotron, which of course made Harry Conman Sr. very happy. He did 3 times about this. After the game, he wrote, "The only one that had a tougher night than the Chiefs was Taylor Swift. She got booed out of the stadium. MAGA is very unforgiving."
Gutfeld wastes no time pointing out the absurdity of Kimmel's transformation. Once the guy making crude jokes with puppets and bikini contests, Kimmel suddenly decided he was the moral compass of America. He swapped beer chugging for crying monologues, frat antics for virtue signaling, and comedy for political sermons. The only problem is, nobody asked for it. When Gutfeld describes Kimmel's metamorphosis, it sounds less like growth and more like a hostage situation, except Jimmy is both the prisoner and the warden.
Poor Jimmy. True, it was a terrible night for women, children, and for the hundreds of thousands of hard-working immigrants who cut his lawn.
It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go. For healthcare, for our climate, for science.
Megyn Kelly sharpens the blade further, dismantling the hypocrisy. Here's a man who spent years profiting off cheap laughs at the expense of women and minorities, only to later posture as the woke gatekeeper of late night. Megyn makes it clear, Kimmel didn't evolve because of principle. He evolved because it was profitable. Hollywood was shifting, sponsors were nervous, and Jimmy reinvented himself to stay relevant. Kelly frames him not as a man of conscience, but as the political equivalent of a weather vane. Whichever way the elite wind blows, Jimmy's already facing that direction, smiling through the teleprompter.
Paid for the whole game, and it was the Eagles fans who were booing her. But you're right, it's all about you. It's always all. Trump's just jealous of Taylor Swift because she has more followers and more money and no kids than he does.
Okay. By the way, I was there all the way through, and she was gone. She was missing in action for most of the second half. So I don't know what he's talking about. Trump left at his previously designated time, which was, I think, 8:02. That had been scheduled, and that is when he left. And it's a little harder, Jimmy, when you're the president.
And then there's the comedy, or lack thereof. Gutfeld hammers on how Jimmy Kimmel's show has stopped being funny altogether. The laughs feel forced, the audience cues predictable, and the monologues are indistinguishable from a DNC press release. Gutfeld argues that when your jokes could double as campaign slogans, you're not a comedian anymore. You're a corporate spokesperson with a laugh track. The sharp irony is that Jimmy once mocked people who acted like this. Now, he is that person.
Make you think twice about a joke or whatever, these things. And, a lot of their points are valid, but a lot of them are also just repulsive. And I mean, they repel people from, they go like, oh, you're no fun. I don't want to be around you.
So, Jeff, this is amazing in this lack of self-awareness that he was the loudest voice in all of this. What could he be talking about?
So
Kelly amplifies this point by drawing attention to Kimmel's arrogance. There's a smugness baked into every monologue, as if Jimmy truly believes he's smarter than his audience, better than his critics, and nobler than the politicians he ridicules. Kelly dismantles that ego, reminding viewers that Jimmy Kimmel is not an intellectual powerhouse. He's not a political theorist. He's a comedian who stumbled into the good graces of Hollywood's ruling class by parroting their lines and crying on cue. The notion that he's some profound voice of the people is laughable, and not in the way he intends.
Last night was the 96th Academy Awards show, and while you might have missed it, there was one clear winner. No, not Oppenheimer. It was sanctimonious leftists for their lead role in pretending they are better than you. Winner number one, Jimmy Kimmel.
What makes this roast particularly brutal is how Gutfeld and Kelly expose the hollowness of Kimmel's identity. He isn't a rebel, he isn't a truth teller, and he isn't even really a comic anymore. He's a mirror, reflecting whatever ideology ensures his seat behind the desk. When Hollywood demanded edgy humor, he delivered raunch. When the culture demanded contrition, he delivered tears. And now, when the ruling class demands compliance, he delivers propaganda. The constant isn't authenticity, it's survival. Gutfeld slices deeper, mocking the idea that Jimmy Kimmel still matters in the late-night landscape. Ratings are abysmal, audiences have migrated to streaming, and the cultural influence once held by Carson or even Letterman is gone. Yet Jimmy clings to the illusion of relevance, pretending his monologues change minds when, in reality, they're just viral clips shared among people who already agree with him. Gutfeld paints the picture of a man screaming into an echo chamber and mistaking the echo for applause. Megyn Kelly turns the roast into a moral audit. She highlights how Jimmy picks and chooses his outrage with surgical hypocrisy. When scandals involve his Hollywood friends, he looks away. When controversies involve his ideological enemies, he becomes a righteous warrior.
Michael, should we be grateful, though, that he's admitting this, even though he doesn't see himself as part of the problem? At least he actually admits there is a problem.
I would also point out that both of these people wore blackface.
Yeah.
And had no consequences for it whatsoever. He sees the writing on the wall. He knows he's next. Sarah Silverman, had a popular career stand for a while. If Jimmy Kimmel thinks he's going to transition to doing podcasts, he's got another thing coming. Because like him and Colbert and all these others, without the network behind them, they're DOA specifically because they're such repulsive.
Kelly doesn't let him escape this contradiction. She calls it what it is: cowardice wrapped in self-righteousness. For all his posturing about courage, Jimmy Kimmel has never taken a risk that might actually cost him something. The takedown wouldn't be complete without tackling the crying. Oh, the crying. Gutfeld skewers Jimmy's infamous tearful monologues, describing them as performances more staged than a soap opera. The tears come when the cameras are rolling, when the ratings are needed, when the message aligns with the moment. It's not that emotions are bad, it's that they're weaponized. Gutfeld calls it performance activism, where the goal isn't change, but clout. Nothing sums up Jimmy Kimmel's modern career better than crocodile tears under studio lights. Kelly drives home the final nail: authenticity. Or rather, the lack of it. People don't tune in to Jimmy Kimmel because they believe in him. They tune in, if they still do at all, because it's background noise, the last remnants of a dying medium. Kelly frames him as a placeholder, a man who only looks powerful because the real titans of comedy have either retired or refused to play ball with Hollywood's conformity. Kimmel is what's left, not what people chose.
Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they've not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT. I knew this day would come, and yet somehow it's even better than I imagined. It's like coming down the stairs on Christmas morning and finding a second tree. What does Elon know? What evidence could there possibly be that Trump was in league with Jeffrey Epstein, other than this and this? And, well, who forget this video that Elon went ahead and posted?
Okay, so they're gonna shoot that into their veins, and that is one reason why we should be glad they seem to reach détente. I mean, I guess the phone.
And that's the cruelest truth Greg Gutfeld laid bare. Jimmy Kimmel isn't a cultural leader. He's a cultural leftover. He doesn't define the era. He's a symptom of it. A once mediocre comedian who found safety in politics, a once rowdy jester who now masquerades as a preacher, a once funny man who forgot the one thing he was actually supposed to do: make people laugh. By the time Gutfeld and Kelly are finished, there's nothing left of Jimmy Kimmel's carefully constructed image. The man behind the desk isn't a moral crusader, isn't a brave truth teller, isn't even a decent comedian anymore. He's just another Hollywood echo, repeating whatever lines are fed to him, mistaking obedience for courage and tears for substance. Jimmy Kimmel's biggest problem is that he doesn't realize the audience is in on the joke, and the joke is him. The man walks onto a stage with the confidence of someone who thinks he's the second coming of Johnny Carson, but what actually comes out is closer to a late-night version of a BuzzFeed listicle dressed up with applause signs and canned laughter. Gutfeld and Kelly hammer this point by highlighting that Kimmel doesn't write comedy so much as he manufactures moral lectures sprinkled with laugh tracks, and instead of inviting laughter, he invites groans. Not from the audience in front of him, who are conditioned to clap on cue, but from viewers at home who are wondering how this guy managed to cling to a time slot once occupied by actual legends.
The people at fault are Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Jill Biden, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, every elected member of Congress. The Democratic Party let that disaster happen. That is not a media failure. That is a Democratic Party failure. And only right-wing manufactured outrage who claims the media and the Democratic Party work as one have fused it into this.
Oh, I have a few names to add. CNN, MSNBC, CBS, the town crier.
It's the smugness that seals it. The idea that because he sits behind a desk, he's some kind of cultural referee, handing out judgments about who's good and who's bad. Kelly rips this apart by pointing out that Kimmel is the least qualified referee in the history of television. The man couldn't manage a comedy sketch without resorting to political cheap shots, and yet he positions himself as some kind of moral compass. This is the same guy who once built a career on The Man Show, a production so drenched in juvenile antics that it made beer commercials look sophisticated. Now suddenly he's rebranded as the voice of progress, wagging his finger at the same culture he used to cash in on. The hypocrisy is so thick, it's practically a laugh track of its own. And then there's the sanctimony, that suffocating sense that every punchline has to come with a lecture attached. Gutfeld picks that apart by explaining how real comedy doesn't need moral packaging. It just needs to be funny. But Kimmel doesn't trust humor to stand on its own anymore. Every segment is a sermon disguised as a monologue, every punchline a political statement, and every guest interview a platform for him to signal that he's not just funny, he's righteous. Except he isn't righteous. He's rehearsed. He's a puppet for applause lines that only land in carefully curated echo chambers.
So I want to start with Jimmy Kimmel, who went on the podcast of comedian Sarah Silverman and said a bunch of crazy shit. Okay, including, I'll just give you this one for flavor. He's yet another leftist who's thinking about fleeing America. So afraid is he of Trump. SOT 23 here.
I know, are thinking about where they can get citizenship and
I do
stuff.
have Italian. I did get Italian citizenship.
You do?
I do.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
I do have that. And what's going on is as bad as you thought it was going to be.
Way worse.
It's so much.
Greg Gutfeld hones in on the desperation, the way Kimmel seems almost addicted to validation from the very audiences he claims to challenge. Every joke is a fishing expedition for clapter instead of laughter, and the result is painful to watch. It's not edgy, it's not daring, it's predictable. He's the comedy equivalent of a Twitter feed where every post says the same thing in slightly different words. There's no spontaneity, no sharpness, no bite, just the same recycled barbs aimed at the same predictable targets week after week, year after year. Kimmel isn't moving culture. He's trailing behind it, shouting commentary that everyone's already heard 1,000 times. The irony is, Kimmel seems to think he's dangerous, like his monologues are shaking the foundations of power, when in reality, they're just background noise for people scrolling their phones. Gutfeld points out the hilarity of Kimmel trying to act like he's some kind of rebel, when in fact he's the establishment's safest mouthpiece. Nothing he says ever risks anything. Nothing he delivers ever surprises. He's a corporate host reading from a corporate script pretending to be a voice of resistance, and when you pull that facade apart, what's left isn't a revolutionary, it's an employee.
For justice, for free speech, it was a terrible night for poor people, for the middle class, for seniors who rely on Social Security, for our allies in Ukraine, for NATO, for the truth and democracy and decency. And it was a terrible night for everyone who voted against him. And guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
You know what? If I ever cry on TV, it'll be because Maroon 5 put out a new song. But that's it. You big.
Kelly takes that even further by noting that Kimmel is basically the anti-late night host. Where late night was once about escapism, laughter, and a sense of communal relief, Kimmel has turned it into therapy for one political party. He's not entertaining a nation, he's consoling a demographic. Instead of inviting everyone in, he builds walls around his comedy, making it exclusive to people who already agree with him. That isn't late night humor, it's late night groupthink, broadcast live and disguised as entertainment. And it gets worse when you realize just how forced it all is. Watch closely, Kelly notes, and you'll see that Kimmel doesn't actually believe half the sanctimony he peddles. It's performative. The crocodile tears, the staged indignation, the carefully timed pauses for audience approval, it's all theater. And not particularly good theater either. You can practically see the gears grinding in his head as he lines up the next cue for applause, as if the entire purpose of his show is to produce clips tailor-made for social media. He's not a comedian hosting a late-night show. He's an influencer with a studio budget.
It's just unbelievable. Like, I feel like it's probably even worse than he would like it to.
Oh, sure, because we look to Jimmy Kimmel to figure out insights into how Donald Trump is thinking. The absurdity of this. I would say go, but I love Italy too much to say that. They don't deserve this. I'm sorry, but he should go to Ireland. They do deserve this. They're as woke as they come. My people, who are like among the toughest people on earth, or were, have gone completely woke. But, you know, I'm Irish and Italian, so I have empathy. And he should not go to Italy. It's too beautiful a country to host.
That's where Gutfeld lands his heaviest punch. Kimmel isn't a risk taker or a comic genius. He's a brand. A brand carefully managed to provide exactly what the establishment wants. Cheap laughs, shallow outrage, and predictable narratives. He's the human equivalent of lukewarm coffee, consumed out of habit, not enjoyment. And like lukewarm coffee, nobody remembers it after they're done. His monologues don't spark conversations, they spark yawns. His sketches don't break the internet, they barely register on it. He's a placeholder host in a time slot that deserves better. By the end of their roast, the picture becomes impossible to miss. Jimmy Kimmel isn't the fearless, sharp-witted voice of late-night television he markets himself as. He's a faded entertainer grasping for significance, hiding behind a shield of politics and self-righteousness. Once a shock jock who thrived on pushing boundaries and making people laugh, he's now morphed into a moralizing schoolmarm, wagging his finger at the very audience that used to embrace him. The transformation is jarring, and not in a good way. Yes, he still has the lights, the cameras, and the platform, but what's missing is the one ingredient that made late-night television worth watching in the first place: relevance. Without it, all that remains is a hollow performance, a once edgy comedian turned predictable scold, struggling to convince people he still matters.